Alrighty, everybody, let's try another game. It's been a little while since we've done one, so looking forward to jumping right in, seeing what kind of game we can get. Alrighty, and here we are. Let's see. We are the black pieces. My opponent leads off with a queen pawn. So I'm going to do this Indian variation. Okay, I think this is some kind of English game. I'm not entirely certain. I'm going to go ahead and continue with my normal strategy. One, two, one, two, three. So I am okay. I'm going to go ahead and continue on with my strategy just to see how things go. Okay, this is fine. I need to move my knight, obviously. So where are we going to move it to? Let's move it up here. Now it is under immediate attack, but it is defended. I think next move for me might be something with my bishop. Get that long-range piece involved. Possibly. I could look at a fianchetto structure, but with this formation of pawns, my bishop along this diagonal doesn't seem that great, so I'm going to hold off. Yep. So this is a target now. This is a weak pawn in the center of the board. Oh, I'm okay. Yeah, I was thinking, do I have to worry about this because I no longer have a knight here? But I don't because I've got this covered, so I'm fine. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so what's next? Maybe... So bishop up here does nothing except bring a pawn into play. So I don't want to worry about that. I think I'm just going to get my knight going, get my knight developed. There's a little bit of pressure here. I do block in my c-pawn, so I have to worry about that a little bit. Okay. And now let's go ahead and... Yeah, let's just get ready to castle. I don't know where my queen's going to go in this position. So my opponent is looking to attack here, but I have two attackers on this pawn now. My opponent only has one defender, so I'm going to go for it. I'm just trying to get an idea of where I want, what I want to do with this knight. Part of me is thinking of pushing this pawn and just solidifying it in the center of the table, and that might actually be really good, come to think of it. It cuts off my dark square bishop. Is that something I'm comfortable with? But notice my opponent could simply push a pawn here, and then I'd have to move the knight anyway. All right, let us go ahead and... So now I'm giving up on that pawn push, and I'm looking at castle versus rotating the knight. Castle versus rotating the knight. Let's go ahead and... Or let's just look to see where this knight can go, right? This is one of the pieces that we have to be careful of. And I think we're okay. I don't think we have too much to be concerned about. So let's go ahead and castle. I think that's a smart move. Yes, I have to worry about this queen and this bishop along these diagonals. So now I'm going to go here. This is a nice place for my knight. I'm comfortable with it. My opponent would have to push all the way up here to get rid of it and weaken themselves in the process. But also, this is a nice... just as soon as I say that. Just as soon as I say that. So if I were to go here, my opponent could push down, and he has that square. If we look at this square, that square is covered by 1, 2, and I have 1, 2, so I can't capture there. But if I were to go here along the edge of the board, is that too much of a trouble? No, because I can always rotate it back underneath if I need to. I think I'm okay. So my opponent is making sure that I can't drop a knight here, which I'm fine with. Let's put some pressure on this knight. What do you say? I'm way outside my comfort zone, y'all. So I'm down on time a little bit. We got plenty of time. I'm not rushing. Trying to make sure that I take things nice and slow. I've been on a losing streak, and you guys can see my rating has dropped down to 1409. I have been on a bit of a losing streak. So I want to make sure that I don't, I want to make sure I take my time and not give away easy things. I hate my knight on the edge of the board right now. It is not a good piece for me. So I'm going to bring my queen all the way up. So that puts 2 attackers on this knight. My queen is undefended, so that's something I have to be careful of, but I think I'm okay. I don't think my opponent can get both of his bishops out of the way to put pressure on my queen at the same time. There's no pin that I can see, so I think I'm okay. I am threatening here. Threatening here. Very good, and my opponent handles both of those really well. But now I have a fork, right? I think. Now, as fast as my opponent played that, I'm wondering if he saw the bishop there. I have that same problem. I miss long range pieces a ton, so I'm wondering if my opponent saw that or not. Sure. I think the goal here is just to start trading, right? Is there any reason why not to? Oops, I've got a couple things I'm looking at. Number one is this configuration. Number two is this configuration. So just trying to make sure that I handle every single possibility here. I don't want to accidentally make any mistakes. I'm in a really good position, very strong position. So now I think the order of business is just grab here. I'm going to trade here. Very good. What's next? What's next? What's next? I could come right back. I think I'm going to grab a pawn, knowing that I could run my queen all the way down, right back to where, get on this light square. D5. I do have back rank issues, right? So that's an odd choice of a move. I think my opponent's trying to trap my queen, so we're going to go ahead and move the queen out of the way. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else I can do right here. Maybe bring a rook into the game. We have this. We'll keep this in mind. I have back rank issues, right? I need to make sure that I don't lose because of a silly back rank checkmate. But I'm up a good ton of material right now. Notice if my opponent now pushes this pawn, that knight falls. I'm probably going to give myself an escape hole. Yeah, very good. So let's give ourselves an escape hole here somewhere. Now we can start here with check. The only option, well, my opponent could block with the rook, but it looks like most likely he'll have to drop back between. And then I can, yeah, so now here is not where I want to go. But let's go ahead and grab pawn. Now notice these two pawns are pretty strong now. So the question is, how do we free ourselves from these two pawns? I've always got this, and I can grab here. I might even sacrifice some material. I'm so far up that it might make sense for me to sacrifice a piece somewhere. in order to shake things loose. So I'm keeping an eye on that. If there's anything that's like, man, I really wish I could get my queen here, for instance. Well, then, you know what? Maybe I'll stick a rook or a bishop or something and, you know, and try to dislodge the game this way. Yeah, okay, very good. Let's just go down here, knowing that we can always slide up this way. The knight should be far enough away that I don't have to worry about any kind of forks. Very good. All right, here's an example of a sacrifice I could make, right? Grab the knight, a pawn captures, and the queen comes back into the game right here. Yes, I'm sacrificing material, but I'm so far up in material right now that that's almost a no-brainer for me to sacrifice that. I've now given myself an escape hole, so I'm perfectly happy. I can start moving my rooks about. I don't have to worry about them anymore. So let's go for it. So we can always grab here now. So we gave back a little bit of material, but I mean, we were up 9 points, and now we're up 8 points. We gave back a little bit of material, but it was worth it, I think. I'm curious now what my opponent's going to do if I go here. Because notice, this is all covered. The queen sitting here means that's covered. The only thing my opponent can do is stick the bishop in the way. And then I think I just take the bishop. But I think this is going to be checkmate pretty quick. Because the bishop here, yeah, the only thing my opponent can do is let me give my opponent a good game, well played. And then, yeah, this is checkmate in one because the only move my opponent has, let me go over here real quick. The only move my opponent has is to block. And then what happens here? Nothing. Checkmate, yeah. The queen is covering all that. This is known as an epaulets mate. I believe that's what the pattern is called. The rooks are like shoulder pads, like epaulets, blocking the king in. So, all right, that was a nice, fast, easy game. Let's take a look. How are we doing on time? Yeah, it's good. Let's just do a quick analysis. So I don't know this opening my opponent did. Let's turn this on and let's look and see what the opening is called. Yeah, I wonder if I had gone here and my opponent had gone Chigorin variation. I'm not familiar with this opening at all. So either way, I just went with my standard. This is what I play. Look, you guys play your own games, right? But this is what I play because I find the flexibility. If I have to, I can always push this pawn and fianchetto the dark square bishop, and then I can castle and have that bishop right defending my king, which is a really strong position. So these are the Indian games, and I could totally do that. In this case, I didn't really have to. And so I just kept up with my, yeah, d5 is the next most common move. And that was what I was debating on doing, but I decided to go e6 instead. Yeah, and then d5 is the next most common. Okay. We're down to very few games, though. And my opponent pushed pass. Yeah, and now we're back to, so this French defense. Okay. So we've gone into a French game somehow. All right, let's get rid of this then. Okay, so from here, yeah, the engine says, I guess retreating the knight around would have been better. Yeah, this is a very weak pawn. And so there's not a whole lot of there's not a whole lot I can do to defend this pawn. push, you know, maybe push this guy out of the way and get my light square bishop, but this light square bishop sitting down here on b7 sometimes runs into trouble because there's nothing defending it. And if your opponent gets their light square bishop opposite, you could have issues where you've got nothing defending your light square bishop, and your light square bishop is pinned because you could drop a rook in the process. So I always am a little nervous with this position, so I always have to keep an eye on that. But it looks like I didn't lose too much with this opening. This is still a weak pawn. And yeah, my opponent went after it right away. And yep, here's what I should have done. Grab it with the queen. Right, because it immediately forces a queen trade because the bishop is under attack. The bishop is undefended. And the only way to defend that bishop would be, I guess, here. But now you got two attackers on the bishop, so the bishop has to retreat. I don't know. I'm not in love with that line. Either way, I grab my pawn. I don't see any major traps yet. Okay, yeah, here's where I was debating a lot, right? So I was debating on pushing a pawn. Let's see what the engine says. So c5 is not on the engine's recommended. If I had gone c5, yeah, because c3, and then I have to move the knight anyway, and now this becomes a weakness. Right, trade. And now, yep, that pawn is immediately targeted. So I'm glad I did not go for that variation. The next one I was looking at was castling or moving the knight. So castling, the engine says, is okay. Moving the knight to f5. The engine does not in love with that, but it's not that bad. Not that big of a deal. I went ahead and castled, which the engine says is pretty good, so I'm happy with that. Engine b5 would have been better to drive this bishop away. But then what? Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I don't see the obviousness of it. Okay, so moving on. Castled, my opponent slid back. And yeah, went ahead and rotated my knight out of the way. This here is where I feel like the game got a little funky, right? Up until this point, the game was very even. We both played, you know, decent moves, but my opponent hasn't castled yet. So by pushing this all the way up, you know, the g pawn all the way up to g4, that's telling me that he's probably looking to castle queenside. And I still have options for my knight, so yeah, I've got only two options for my knight, so he's not trapping my knight. Yeah, like I said, this rook move was to prevent here, but he immediately goes into a fork. The only thing is, obviously the queen is defending the fork, but then he ends up blocking his own queen. No, I get a second attacker down there, which helps. So a pawn storm against my king, perfectly acceptable. I have no problems with that whatsoever. I wish my opponent had gotten developed first, castled, and then pawn stormed. I think that may have been a bit stronger to get his king to safety, get his other pieces involved in the game, and then push this pawn storm. Maybe he could have slow rolled it a bit. Yeah, so now we've got two attackers in this knight, and by moving the knight, yeah, you can see how the engine has completely shifted at this point in time. My opponent just completely, unfortunately, lost the thread there. Didn't see the attack. Yeah, now I've got 2 attackers, and unfortunately, not a lot of good options here for my opponent. And notice now he can't castle because I'm blocking the path. So putting his bishop there to stop me from blocking his path. What does the engine say? The engine says continue with the attack. Ignore this bishop, because if you go here and your opponent captures, then it's checkmate. Nope, not that. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to I mean, most of those are fairly forced moves. Okay. I'm trying to do it without looking at the side panel, without looking at the recommended moves. So, like I said, my opponent was trying to get castled queenside by weakening all these squares in front of his kingside, though. It gave me a little bit too much tempo, and now my opponent has lost castling rights. Yeah, and from here on out, it was just a cleanup game. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Yeah, I felt really good with all this. Okay, so here was a checkmate in 2 that I missed. Oh, it's the same. It's the same pattern, right? It's the same exact thing. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, same pattern. I could have done it a lot sooner, and I missed it until right about here. So, alrighty, guys. This was a fun game. Very short, very fast. Both of us were well outside our comfort zones. You could see that in the... my opponent played very fast these first few moves. You could see I had to think 9:38 to 10:09. I had to do the thinking. So he was in book until probably right about here, I'm guessing. Yeah, you could see his think time jumped right here. Yeah, so his think time jumped 30 some odd seconds, almost 40 seconds. But I'm trying to do better to use my clock, right? Use our clock. We've got the time, use it. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I feel like in this game I did. Yes, I was behind on time for most of it, but I mean, 6:30 to 9 minutes, I definitely used a lot more clock. And I think in this game it paid off, where I was able to take advantage of some of the tempo misses my opponent had. Alrighty, I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.